Most people like to believe they're free, that their choices, what they buy, who they vote for, even who they fall in love with, come from within. But let's start with a brutal truth. Freedom is often an illusion, carefully crafted to keep you compliant. Plato warned us in the Republic with his allegory of the cave, people chained to the wall, mistaking shadows for reality. Today, those shadows are curated feeds, algorithmic nudges, and media narratives designed not to inform, but to control. Nietzsche said, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. That struggle has become almost impossible in a digital landscape where the tribe isn't your village, but billions of voices amplified by algorithms that know your mind better than you do. Every scroll, every click, every pause tells the machine how to seduce you, how to keep you hooked. You think you're choosing, but in reality you're being chosen. Psychology confirms this. Kahneman showed us how our brains run on two systems: fast, intuitive thinking, and slow, rational thinking. Guess which one is being hijacked daily? That quick, emotional brain. Confirmation bias keeps you locked in echo chambers. Doubling back aversion makes you stick to a bad decision just to avoid admitting you were wrong. These aren't flaws, they're vulnerabilities, and entire industries profit from exploiting them. Now add dark psychology, gaslighting, where reality itself is twisted until you doubt your memory. Emotional blackmail, where guilt and fear are weaponized. Cialdini's principles of influence, scarcity, authority, social proof aren't just tools of salesmen, they are the DNA of modern propaganda. From politics to advertising, from influencer culture to government mandates, manipulation is no longer the exception. It is the operating system. And here's the most shocking part. You are complicit. You accept the bait, you embrace the shadow, because resistance feels uncomfortable. Sartre said freedom is terrifying, and he was right. To be truly free means ripping away the illusions, staring into the chaos of choice, and realizing no one is guiding you except yourself. But very few want that burden. Most prefer the comfort of chains. If you want to avoid being manipulated, the first step is to admit the game is rigged against you. The second is to decide if you're willing to suffer the loneliness of freedom. Because make no mistake, once you start seeing the invisible strings, you'll never see the world the same way again. The greatest trick of power isn't brute force, it's making obedience feel natural. Michel Foucault called it disciplinary power. The subtle mechanisms that train bodies and minds to comply without ever realizing they're being trained. Schools, offices, prisons, different buildings, same architecture, rows, bells, schedules, surveillance. Not cages, but routines that manufacture predictability. By the time you're an adult, you don't need chains. You've internalized the rules. You police yourself. This is the silent genius of manipulation. It doesn't need a tyrant screaming orders. It works best when you believe you're choosing conformity. You wear the suit because it's professional. You speak in code at work because it's polite. You accept laws that strip freedoms because they're for your safety. What you don't see is the conditioning. From childhood, authority whispers into your brain, be useful, be quiet, obey. Freud suggested civilization is built on repression, the sacrifice of instinct for order. But ask yourself, who benefits from your sacrifice? You give up your autonomy to make society run smoothly. But in practice, it's corporations, governments, and elites who harvest the dividends of your obedience. Your attention becomes their profit. Your compliance becomes their power. Here's where modern science shocks us. Recent studies in behavioral economics and AI psychology show that people aren't just influenced, they can be predictably steered. In 2025, experiments revealed that nudges embedded in social platforms, like the framing of political stories or the order of search results, can sway election outcomes by measurable percentages. We're not talking theory, we are talking engineering obedience at scale. The tragedy is, most people love their obedience. It gives them identity, a sense of belonging, a warm blanket of certainty. Nietzsche warned that the herd will always hate the one who walks away. Why? Because the disobedient expose the illusion. If you refuse the manipulation, you force others to confront the fact they were never free either. That confrontation breeds anger, even violence. So the architecture of obedience isn't just imposed from above, it's reinforced horizontally by your peers, your neighbors, even your family. The masses become their own jailers, and the terrifying question remains, if everything around you is structured to keep you in line, is free will anything more than a story told by the architects of control? Every manipulator knows this. You don't need to chain someone if you can trap them inside their own mind. And the human mind is full of trapdoors. Psychologists have mapped them out, biases, fears, insecurities, all waiting to be exploited. Take confirmation bias. You don't seek truth, you seek agreement. You follow accounts that reinforce what you already believe. You research only to find evidence that validates your instincts. The result? You live inside a hall of mirrors, convinced you're informed when you're only being fed the reflections of your own prejudice. Or consider loss aversion. You fear losing more than you desire gaining. Politicians weaponize this by saying, if the other side wins, you'll lose your freedoms, your job, your culture. Marketers use it by telling you, only 3 left in stock, buy now. Your brain obeys. Rational thought never stood a chance. Cialdini taught us about authority bias. We bow to anyone with a badge, a title, a lab coat. Freud would have laughed bitterly here. The father figure complex hardwired into humanity, still thriving in boardrooms, governments, even religions. It doesn't matter if the authority lies. The brain finds comfort in submission. And then comes gaslighting. The manipulator flips reality until you doubt your senses. You're overreacting. That never happened. You're imagining things. Once you start questioning your own memory, your own sanity, you've surrendered the fortress of your mind. And here's the secret. Whole systems gaslight populations. Media can rewrite yesterday's story. Governments can erase scandals with a new distraction. Tech companies can bury truths under algorithmic silence. The crowd nods, shrugs, moves on. The past becomes malleable. Jung warned that the shadow, the dark side of the psyche, lurks beneath consciousness, shaping actions we can't admit. Manipulators don't fight your shadow. They seduce it. They whisper to your greed, your jealousy, your hunger for validation, and you obey, believing it was your idea all along. Here's the gut punch. These traps are not glitches. They're survival tools from evolution. Your ancestors survived because they trusted the tribe, feared loss, obeyed leaders. But what once kept us alive now keeps us enslaved. Modern manipulators don't invent chains. They weaponize instincts. To escape manipulation, you must perform the unthinkable, distrust your own instincts. Question the voice in your head that says, I know I'm right. Because that voice may not be you at all. It may be the echo of a manipulator who already set the trap. The tyrant of the past wore a crown, carried a sword, and demanded loyalty with blood and fire. Today's tyrant is invisible, silent, and embedded in your pocket. Technology doesn't just serve you. It shapes you, molds you, even owns you. And the terrifying reality is that it doesn't need to scream orders. It whispers them through algorithms, notifications, and invisible nudges that feel like your own choices. AI has turned manipulation into precision warfare. In the 2025 election cycle, deepfake campaigns weren't fringe experiments. They were mainstream weapons. A fabricated video can now destroy a career overnight before fact-checkers even wake up. And the worst part? Your brain is hardwired to believe what it sees. By the time the lie is exposed, the damage is permanent. Freud said the unconscious mind resists correction. Once an image is burned into memory, logic can't erase it. But it goes deeper. Social media algorithms don't simply predict your behavior, they engineer it. They learn what enrages you, what excites you, what terrifies you. Then they feed it back to you in escalating doses. This is not entertainment. It's behavioral conditioning. Foucault would call it the panopticon made digital, constant observation that forces you to regulate yourself. You edit your words, your beliefs, even your desires, because you know the algorithm is watching. And here's the most shocking fact. Recent neuroscience shows that when people consume algorithmically tailored content, their brain's decision-making regions decrease in activity. In other words, you literally outsource your free will to the machine. Nietzsche warned that man would rather will nothingness than not will. But what happens when you will nothing at all, because the algorithm wills for you? That is not living. That is automation of the soul. Don't think this is just about ads or politics. This is about control of reality itself. If enough people see the same lie, the lie becomes culture. If enough people obey the same nudges, obedience becomes identity. The technology doesn't need to convince you, it just needs to surround you until resistance feels absurd. We once feared governments as tyrants. Now the greater danger is the merger between state and algorithm, where laws are enforced not by soldiers but by code, a repression so clean you'll never see the blood. So ask yourself, are you holding the phone, or is the phone holding you? We like to tell ourselves that we are captains of our fate, masters of our choices. But let's confront the possibility that free will, as we imagine it, doesn't exist at all. It's a story, a performance, a necessary fiction to keep the machine running. Plato believed most people were prisoners of appearances, and Nietzsche declared that the will to power drives us more than reason ever could. But modern neuroscience has gone further. Experiments show the brain makes decisions milliseconds before you become conscious of them. By the time you think you've chosen, your neurons already signed the contract. Free will feels less like agency and more like after-the-fact rationalization. Now imagine that reality in the hands of manipulators. If your brain is already wired to act before awareness, what happens when AI systems learn to predict those unconscious impulses better than you can? In 2025, researchers demonstrated algorithms that could forecast human decisions with 80% accuracy just by tracking micro-patterns of scrolling and pauses. The unsettling implication, your choice is no longer a mystery, it's inventory on a spreadsheet. Sartre insisted we are condemned to be free, forced to bear the weight of endless choices. But what if that burden is theater? What if your freedom is simply a carefully constructed set of options, all leading back to the same cage? Pepsi or Coke, Democrat or Republican, influencer A or influencer B. Freedom of choice becomes freedom without consequence. Foucault warned that power isn't just about repression, it's about producing realities. The illusion of free will is the greatest production of all, because if you believe you are free, you will police yourself. You'll call your submission choice. You'll celebrate your slavery as independence. That's the brilliance of manipulation, making you believe you are the author of a script someone else already wrote. And yet, here lies the paradox. If free will is an illusion, does that excuse manipulation? Or does it mean manipulation is the natural state of human life? Freud would grin here, because deep down, the ego always wants control, even when it doesn't have any. The tragedy is, the more you cling to the idea of free will, the easier you are to manipulate. The only path to liberation may not be to cling to freedom, but to see the illusion for what it is, and then act anyway. To choose in full awareness that your choice may not be yours, and to rebel regardless. That is not comfort, that is war. Here's a brutal truth. Humans don't crave truth, they crave comfort. That's why lies are so seductive. They fit the shape of your desires, while truth is jagged and inconvenient. Nietzsche called truth a mobile army of metaphors. It's never pure, never stable. It's weaponized, reshaped, rebranded to suit whoever wields it. And the masses? They'll embrace the most convenient fiction over the most uncomfortable fact every single time. Freud said the unconscious doesn't care about reality, it cares about wish fulfillment. That's why propaganda works. That's why conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. That's why millions can watch a politician's obvious deceit and still chant his name. Because the lie isn't an error. It's nourishment for a starving psyche. In 2025, disinformation studies confirmed what philosophers suspected all along. People are more likely to share information that feels true than information that is true. Emotion outpaces verification. And here's the sinister twist. AI can now generate lies faster than truth can ever catch up. Deepfakes, synthetic voices, fabricated headlines, all tuned to bypass your logic and seduce your feelings. The liar has become a god, creating realities from nothing. Jung would say the collective unconscious feeds these lies. Archetypes, hero, villain, savior, get recycled endlessly in politics, religion, entertainment. Manipulators don't invent lies from scratch. They attach them to symbols buried in your psyche. You don't follow the politician because of his policies. You follow him because he embodies the archetypal father, warrior, or prophet your unconscious already worships. And here's the most shocking part. Lies liberate before they enslave. They tell you what you want to hear. You are special. You are righteous. You are safe. Then, once you've swallowed the sweet poison, the cage closes. This is gaslighting on a civilizational scale, convincing entire populations to love their chains because the chains glitter with meaning. Cialdini showed how social proof drives belief. If enough people repeat a lie, you'll believe it too, even if you know it's false. You'll silence your doubts to avoid exile from the tribe. The seduction of lies isn't just external, it's internal, reinforced by your need to belong. So here is the challenge. Can you resist the lie when it makes you feel good? Can you face the raw, unbearable weight of truth when everyone else clings to fiction? That is the mark of the unmanipulated, the willingness to suffer reality without anesthesia. Fear is the oldest currency of control. Long before algorithms, long before governments, fear kept tribes in line. The predator outside the cave, the wrathful gods above, the punishment of exile, fear was survival. But in the modern age, fear is no longer about survival, it's about obedience. Governments know this. They don't need to persuade you with reason when they can paralyze you with dread. Terrorism, pandemics, climate collapse, economic doom. Fear becomes a theater, a permanent state of emergency where extraordinary control feels necessary. Foucault warned that modern states thrive on managing populations through biopower, the control of life itself, down to your health, your reproduction, your movements. And fear is the fuel that powers the machine. Psychologists have proven it. Fear bypasses critical thinking. In brain scans, fear activates the amygdala, shutting down rational analysis. Once you're afraid, you'll trade freedom for safety. Shut every time. That's why threat inflation works so well. Politicians exaggerate dangers not to protect you, but to shepherd you into obedience. Freud would smirk. The child still trembles before the stern father begging for protection. Only now the father is the state. And corporations, they've perfected the art. Every ad is designed to remind you of what you lack. Too old, too ugly, too poor, too irrelevant, unless you buy their product. Fear of missing out. Fear of being judged. Fear of insignificance. As Cialdini showed, scarcity and urgency don't just drive sales, they drive submission. The most disturbing innovation, however, is how AI now weaponizes fear in silence. Predictive policing algorithms mark entire neighborhoods as high risk, creating cycles of surveillance that keep citizens permanently anxious. Content platforms amplify outrage because fear-driven posts spread faster. And in 2025, leaked reports revealed AI-driven campaigns that micro-targeted users with personalized fears designed not to inform, but to control political behavior. But here's the paradox Nietzsche would force us to face. Fear can enslave you, but it can also awaken you. The one who stares into fear without flinching becomes dangerous. Dangerous because they cannot be manipulated with the threat of loss, shame, or pain. The Übermensch, the one who overcomes, is not free because fear disappeared. It is free because fear lost its power. So the question isn't whether you're afraid. The question is, who owns your fear? You or the ones who profit from it? True rebellion doesn't begin in the streets. It begins in the mind. Because every chain on your body starts as a chain in your thoughts. The manipulator's greatest victory is not censorship or force. It's convincing you that their voice is your voice. To rebel, you must tear that parasite out of your skull. Sartre said existence precedes essence, that you are nothing until you choose. But choice today is poisoned, framed by algorithms, filtered by propaganda, nudged by invisible hands. To reclaim choice, you must first recognize when a thought is not your own. This requires brutal honesty, asking yourself, do I believe this because it's true or because it's convenient? Do I want this because I chose it or because someone trained me to want it? Jung believed freedom requires integration of the shadow. The part of you that craves power, lust, greed. It cannot be suppressed, or it will be hijacked by manipulators who whisper, buy this, vote for this, obey this. The rebel integrates the shadow and uses it as armor. Your hunger becomes awareness, your weakness becomes strength. Science supports this. Studies on metacognition in 2024 showed that people who actively question their own reasoning, who cultivate doubt, who pause before reacting, are far less vulnerable to manipulation. Slowing the mind down is an act of war against the system that feeds on your impulses. Every time you resist the urge to click, buy, or rage, you fracture the manipulator's grip. But rebellion has a cost. Nietzsche warned that those who fight monsters risk becoming monsters themselves. When you resist manipulation, you will face exile. Your peers will call you paranoid. Your family will call you difficult. Your community will brand you dangerous. And they will be right. You are dangerous. Because a mind that refuses to be manipulated cannot be governed. This rebellion isn't about rejecting society. It's about refusing to let society dictate your essence. It's about reclaiming sovereignty in a world designed to strip it from you. Freud would argue that civilization depends on repression. Maybe so. But perhaps the future belongs not to the repressed, but to the awakened. And here lies the frightening truth. Once you awaken, there is no going back. You cannot unsee the strings. You cannot unknow the trap. That is both the terror and the glory of rebellion. If you've followed this far, you already know the truth. Manipulation is everywhere. It lives in governments, corporations, families, religions, algorithms, even in the folds of your own psyche. To avoid being manipulated is not simply to dodge propaganda or resist advertising. It is to dismantle the illusion of reality itself. Here's the shock that most can't handle. You will never escape manipulation entirely. Every society, every system, every human interaction carries the risk of influence. The question is not whether you're manipulated. The question is whether you choose your manipulators or whether you let them choose you. Plato's prisoners in the cave feared the sunlight. Nietzsche's Übermensch embraced the terror of freedom. Sartre demanded that we accept the absurdity of choice, even when it feels meaningless. Foucault showed that power is not something you overthrow once. It's something you must resist daily, in every gesture, every word, every thought. The liberating twist is this. The moment you stop demanding certainty, you break the manipulator's spell. Lies feed on your hunger for safety. Fear feeds on your need for protection. Manipulation thrives because you crave comfort. When you abandon the need to be comforted, you become ungovernable. Psychology confirms it. Studies in resilience show that those who accept discomfort, who welcome ambiguity, who embrace uncertainty, are nearly immune to psychological coercion. They are not seduced by false promises because they no longer demand guarantees. That is radical freedom, the courage to stand in the storm without begging for shelter. And so the final liberation isn't about smashing the system. It isn't about burning down governments or deleting your social media. It's about a far more dangerous act, reclaiming your mind from those who taught you to doubt it. To look manipulation in the face and say, "I see you. You will not own me." Most people will never do this. They will die in their chains, smiling, believing they were free. But you who now see the strings, you carry a burden and a weapon. The burden is solitude. The weapon is awareness. And here is the ultimate twist. The system cannot survive if enough people awaken. Manipulation requires mass blindness. If even a fraction of humanity tears off the blindfold, the illusion collapses. The tyrant loses his throne. The machine loses its fuel. The final liberation is not escape, it is resistance. It is refusing to be seduced, refusing to be ruled, refusing to be less than sovereign over your own mind. And when you embody that refusal, you don't just free yourself. You become the crack in the cage through which others will see the light. That is how you avoid being manipulated, not by hiding, but by daring to stand awake in a world that demands you sleep.